yet another episode of All Things Conflict. And, you know, I love doing this podcast. And I'm your host, Maria Arpa. And today I have a really wonderful and sweet guest. Her name is Michelle Pinckney. She's actually married to Abdul Kareem, who is another guest on our show. And the reason I decided to invite Michelle is because we've spoken a lot about leadership and boards and non-executive directors and non-profits and all sorts of things, and we've spoken very much at the leadership end. But when it goes wrong, when conflict arises and it's not resolved in a healthy way, there are all these other people that suffer at the other end of that. And, Michelle is a born nurturer. She is one of those people who wants to take care of people. She doesn't put herself forward or out there. She cooks. She gives people nutritious food. She takes care of the environment. And she loves to do these things in service. So I thought it would be really interesting to hear from her side, from her end of when things go wrong and when there are disputes. So let's meet Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the show and helping us to talk about all things conflict. It's really wonderful to welcome you. We've known each other about 4 years, something like that. Is that right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I do remember meeting you, and I just remember I particularly was struck by your desire to be of service and how important that is for you. And so when I met you, you were giving service in a community and living with Kareem, who's also a guest on this podcast. And your service was to be catering and feeding people and nourishing people and looking after people and looking after the building with joy. And yet, as I remember it, there was quite a lot of suffering. And as a caterer, as someone who nourishes people, who looks after people, who nurtures people around you, what happens is often you're not seen. Often people only notice you if things are going wrong. So you're kind of privileged to a lot of conversations and to a lot of situations and things that actually I think have generated some upset in you at times. And we've talked a lot about leadership in this series, but I'm really wanting to hear about people in community and the kinds of work that you do and where you see people unable to communicate with each other, and to delve into some of the reasons for that from your knowledge pool and wisdom.
Thank you, Maria, for having me. It's such a pleasure. It's been such a pleasure working with you and continuing our relationship through many different ways. But yeah, it's been very interesting living and working with community and being a community member as well, and just hearing from the outside how people feel cared for and welcomed and enjoying the presence of what we have to give, and being on the inside and being a part of the small little conflicts that come up, and sometimes bigger conflicts that come up in the behind the scenes is a really interesting dynamic to hold and to try to hold it all. And as I'm caring for people and making sure they feel the love and cared for, it's difficult to process all at the same time, as far as just when being in community, there's a lot of good intention. People really want to give. And sometimes it's beyond their capabilities of where they're at in life. And they mean well. I really believe that a lot of people have a good heart and they really mean well. But if you don't have the capabilities of really supporting the community as it needs to be supported, there's a way that hardship comes with that, and there's a way that um, there's a lack of understanding, and which creates a lot of frustrations on both parts, for people that don't really know how to give in the way they've been giving because they don't have the capacity to give in that way anymore. And then there's a way that there's others that can give and can do that kind of gets a little the short end of the stick, I think I would say, because of their capabilities, at least from my understanding.
Yeah, so if I hear you correctly, then one thing is that everybody's well intentioned, and you trust the intentions of everybody to, why would anyone come to community if they didn't have good intentions? But then there are the issues of, what is giving service? What is being of service? What does it require of us? And just having the intention alone might not be sufficient to deliver that which is needed, especially when people come in need of healing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's really tricky because sometimes we may just need someone to just sit down and have a cup of tea with someone else and just be there with them, and that's enough for that moment. And sometimes that's not what they want to do. Sometimes they want to do something else, and realizing they're not helping as well as they could have been helping if they would have just sat down and had that cup of tea.
Yeah, so then there's kind of over giving or trying to control the help that somebody gets. Is that, control issues. Interestingly, in a different organisation, I met someone who said, we have a lot of beneficiaries that come dressed as volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So people actually who are in need of healing themselves, who can't or don't even know that that's what they need. And I think there's a term called wounded healers.
Yes. Yeah. It makes it tricky because there's a way that they need it so bad, and they don't know, they can spot it in everyone else, but they can't spot it within themselves. And if you try to say something about it, or you try to kind of reflect back to them, hey, maybe this is a good time for you to just take in the moment and just be for a few, or a little while, because you've been holding that specific position for a long time, and maybe it's time for someone else to take it on so you can just be and enjoy the fruits of your labor that you've done for so many years. And sometimes that's not received well.
Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in that. There's a lot of wisdom in what you're sharing. And so I suppose the question is, that's one thing kind of at the community sort of volunteering level, but as that creeps up leadership, what happens in your experience?
Oh, so what I've witnessed from my experience in community life and leadership, there's a way that everybody wants to be a leader. No, that phrase, "There's a whole lot of chiefs and not enough Indians." Is everybody has an opinion about something. Everybody wants something done a certain way, but no one wants to do the actual work. It's like everybody wants to dictate how things are done. And that's really detrimental for the community because in history, is as we know, there's always a leader, there's always someone to guide the community. And then you can come to that understanding, and then we look at it, and there's a way that the leader, the one that's supposed to be the leader, isn't given, I hate to use the word power, but I guess the real word is power, or hasn't given maybe the right word is hasn't given the reins, because I hate to use that word power because it can be taken negatively as well as positively. So it hasn't really been given the opportunity to fully step into that leadership position and to guide the community as they see fit. Um, and then there's other people on the sidelines that's fighting for that power and want to be the leader, but don't have the capacities to be the leader. So all that does for the community is just witness that, oh, wow, well, the leaders, the ones that are supposed to be guiding us, can't even agree on who's going to be guiding us. And that just creates separation. And they don't realize. So then you have all these little pockets of people following their leader, who they assume to be the leader. And the community doesn't get anywhere. And that's what I witnessed. I witnessed a place where people have good intentions, but everyone saw someone else as the leader, did not see who was supposed to be the leader at the time. And we made some progress. I would say we did. I was able to witness some progress, but as quick as I would say as quick I was able to witness and see it, the slow progress. Once something shifts and changes, it just crumbles. It completely crumbles. And all the progress that we made going forward, it stopped or it reversed. And it's just heartbreaking to see, especially when there's a lot of time that was dedicated, that was volunteer work, as well as being paid by a community. I was also volunteering a great chunk of my time. And to see it just crumble within months and not make any movement over a year or so, it's really heartbreaking.
So, as you were speaking, the word that came to mind, you were saying there's an appointed leader and then other people, claiming. The word that came to mind was rivalry. Does that resonate for you? Sort of rivalry?
Yes, absolutely.
So, and an inability to collaborate, inability because people see things as a competition rather than a chance for a real dialogue.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this idea that people sort of gather and create, cliques or little sort of side following things, and then how that can break everything down. And what I experience in many communities is, and perhaps you could speak to this, is, you didn't want to use that word power because mostly people interpret that as having power over others. And yet, what's really healthy is power sharing. And what I experienced is once somebody has power, whether that's power over resources, for example, at the point that we get to the power sharing, where that requires the leadership to let go of some control in order to be in community, in order to really share, then that's for me where it falls down, that the actual people who are holding on to the resources actually can't trust enough. Is that your experience? Could you speak to that in any way?
Yeah, there's a way that with all the resources that we have, or we had, because I'm no longer in that community anymore, So there's a way that there was bountiful resources and so many different solutions and so many different ways we could have handled it. Um, but there was such a fear of scarcity that we were nowhere near scarcity. And that fear just encompassated everything and took away from the reality of where we were really at and where we were trying to go. That people, even though staying and not moving was more detrimental than trying something new and going forward, there was that fear was so huge among so many people that it prevented us from really going forward and pushing through as far as we can get, because they didn't want to let go. They were so scared of the scarcity, like, oh, well, we're doing okay now. Why do we have to change? And it's like, well, if we kept going the route we're going, we're not going to have any funds in a year and a half. This is the best time to try to change so we can develop more, increase our people coming in and staying at the center, increase participants at events, and in doing more inclusive events. Like there was a whole bunch that we really wanted to do. Um, and it hurts, it really hurts my heart to know that I don't feel that we really did as much as we could have because of the fear of others and and not being allowed to really take the bull by the reins, so to speak, and just really try to push forward. It was really, I feel that was the turning point of realizing that, oh, okay, we're really not everybody's really on board and not able to let go. And I think it made the community suffer in a way that it probably is a hard pill for them to swallow.
Yeah, that's really interesting listening to you that, in many ways, and when we come to community, the whole point is to generate abundance. And I don't necessarily mean money, but,
Mhm.
that actually when you looked at the surroundings and, the gifts from God or Allah, the gifts were all there in
Mhm.
abundance, and yet the people were in scarcity or the threat of scarcity. And how do we account for that? I mean, how do you account for that? How do you look at that now in your life and say, wow, it's amazing the capacity humans have to reduce and diminish what they've been given?
Oh, so even though it's been like 2 years since I haven't been involved, um, I'm gonna be honest, it's hard for me to look back on that
Right.
because and then when I do, there's a lot of sadness because there's so much potential. And there was so many, there was maybe not so many of us, but there was a really good handful of us, a strong, good handful of us that was able and capable and had the deepest love for the community and for the place that we could have done it because we were doing it. If the others on the on the sidelines could just let go a little bit, just a little bit more, I think it would have been able to flourish because there was so much potential. And there's a lot of sad, like I look, I'm thinking now, I was like, yeah, there's sadness, there's hurt, I could still feel the land. I could feel the land crying out, like, feed me. And it's not feed me because it needs to be mowed or because it needs water. It's feed me because the land that we were on was there to serve. The land was there to serve the the sick, the happy, the healthy. Like it was there. And there's a way that it's just not being as fully utilized as the intention was from the beginning. Originally from the beginning, when the land was purchased, it was to be of service and to be self-sustaining. And that's the real route that we were trying to go down. And it's just sad. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's just sad.
No, because it ties back very nicely to what some of the things you said at the beginning about, and I've had experience of this in the voluntary sector, that there are lots of people who have got lots of helpful suggestions, and you could, write a book the size of War and Peace with all the helpful suggestions, but no willingness to actually get one's hands dirty and help manifest those things. And it's often the same in a lot of organisations, non-profit, voluntary sector, community, that in the end, a handful of people do all the work while a lot of
Yes.
other people look on and criticise.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's the hardest part, because I've I've always been a giver. It doesn't matter what part of my life I was at. I've always known as the giver and always known to care for people and feed people, regardless of where I was at. So having that deeply rooted inside of me, um, and going there with this, it was really rough because it was like I kept hitting a wall, that you're just banging your head against a cement brick, and it's like, wait, what are we doing? Like, this could be done so much smoothly and easier. Um, but it's the joys of what happens when you're in community life. Everyone has something they want to say and they want to add, which could be beneficial, but it's also sometimes not helpful if you're not willing to get the hands dirty.
So looking back on that and other experiences through your life, or wherever, what have you learned about conflict? What have you learned about conflict and the way people manage it and how it could be managed?
Oh, um, so what I've really learned is, for starters, the message sent is not always the message received. And that's where I feel a lot of the conflicts start. Then you have this interpretation, and everyone has their own interpretation of how something is taken. Even a hello, good morning could be taken three different ways. So a lot of the conflict, and for me, it's just a lack of really deep understanding and communication. And if everyone just took the time to realize, wait, we're all here for the same reason. We all love each other. We all love this place. We all love to serve. We have the same foundation. We have the same morals. Why can't we just learn to hear each other and to know that we all are coming from a good place and not coming with malintent? And once we let go of our suspicions, that's when we can really work and focus together. Um, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
Oh,
that's kind of that's what landed with me when you asked the question.
well, it really did. That was a really great answer because you brought up this word, and actually, it's something we don't talk about, but I think it's really important. Is how much suspicion, when we don't know, when we're uncertain, and the stories that we make up when we see things and we don't understand and we don't take the time, is the arousal of suspicion. And I think that's a
Yes.
really good answer. And I'd love you to say something about suspicion and how toxic it is and examples
Oh,
maybe.
oh, um, so, oh Lord, I have so many examples. I can try to, hmm. Okay. So an example of someone can, this is just I'm just kind of making it up as a,
Yeah,
not to
just an
really
example
pinpoint
that's,
any.
yeah.
So someone can come where I was working and they can, something simple gesture, bring a plant, a potted plant, and maybe put it inside the building somewhere. And I can come in behind them, not knowing who it was, to clean, because that was my role, is to clean the facilities and make sure it was always ready for guests. Didn't matter what time of the day it was. And say I would take it and I would move it because maybe it was blocking something or maybe it was in my way when I was cleaning it and I would move it to another location. And instead of approaching me and saying, hey, how are you? You know, I noticed I placed a plant over here in this area. Why was it moved? You know, I'm just curious and what, why it moved and why it's in the new location. They would make a whole story and run with it. And all of a sudden, everyone in that small community would be aware, oh, the plant was moved because I didn't want the plant or something negative, instead of approaching me and saying and asking me why it was moved. So the suspicion is okay, because in that, for me, the suspicion can turn into curiosity. Because then it's like, oh, okay, a suspicion comes. I was like, wait, let me be curious. Let me ask. Let me confront. And it can be a simple answer and accept that answer. Because if I tell you, well, I'm sorry, I was cleaning that area and it was in the way, or maybe I felt like it needed to be a little bit more sunlight. I was just rearranging. It had nothing to do with I didn't want it there because so and so put it there, and it none of it. Like the stories that go on and what people do tell themselves is really detrimental. And my advice is, I know a lot of people don't like to meet conflict head on, but a lot of the times when you meet it head on, it's really not what you tell yourself it is. And it could really change. Just that changing suspicion to curiosity can change how you see something and how you want to handle it going forward.
Yeah, I love that. Change suspicion to curiosity. Um, and it's such a great example because on the face of it, it's very trivial. But these little things fuel and feed. If someone's got a perspective or a position or an opinion, then they use these little examples to feed and fuel that position instead of being able to say, let's just find out. Let's just be
Yeah.
curious. Let's just have some humility. Let's just compassionately see what's what. And it's amazing because, as I said, you know, this has been a whole series, and I've had lots of guests on talking about directors and all sorts of things. And yet, what you bring is that really simple example, and we've all got an example like it of something that
Hmm.
happened where somebody made an assumption about us, or I made an assumption about somebody.
Yeah.
The other way round, both ways round. It's such a sweet and it's such a lovely piece of advice. Turn your suspicion, if it comes up as suspicion, turn it into curiosity. What a wonderful, wonderful, simple thing that could just improve everyone's daily life.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, being under that umbrella of suspicion constantly for a really long time, um, trying to come out of that fight or flight mode and trying to heal from the trauma. Because I hate to use that word, and it's like, wow, but it was trauma. It was really, there was trauma involved. I've now, it's like, no, let me be curious, because I don't want to inflict the same pain and hurt that I've gone through to someone else, because so that's my learning curve. So it's like, okay, let's be curious. Let me go ask a question. And sometimes people look at me, well, why are you going to ask? Just leave it alone. It's like, no, I can't leave it alone. I need to be curious because that's the only way that's going to help me. Because then that's going to put a bridge and cover up that hole of suspicion. And once you find out, then you know how to handle it and go forward.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Ever the nurturer, Michelle. That's just so, yeah, so human of you to say, well, even through my healing process, I'm not going to just sit in sort of blame and judgment of others. It's let's do the learning. Let's do the learning.
Yeah, yeah.
So we haven't got a huge amount of time for this interview, and our time together's coming to an end. But what are you doing now? Because you've really turned things around, and I think that you've got plans afoot. And yeah, tell us about who you are now.
So now I do have a full-time job. So trying to get my catering business off the ground in New York, because as you know, I've done it in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia. I do have something on the books to go back to Maryland, DC area, so I'm excited in September. But I've been baking bread and pastries and cooking and just trying to cater to those that need assistance in like meal planning and working in the community I used to work at. There were so many dietary restrictions that kind of really I found to be easy to learn how to navigate. And I didn't realize how difficult it is for a lot of people to learn how to cook for themselves to help their health according to what sicknesses or things or goals that they have. So that's what I've been doing. I've been cooking under the Cultivate Mercy umbrella as an act of service and looking into how to donate my foods to food pantries and just the community. Because cooking is really ultimately my passion and caring for people is my passion. So just trying to get that off the ground here in New York.
Yeah, so you can be found on Long Island, is that right?
Yes, I'm in Ronkonkoma, New York, Long Island.
Wrong,
Yes.
yeah, and how amazing. So, if people are interested in your work, it's about the marriage between food and nutrition and nurturing and making sure that people are eating good nutritious food as well as then catering for events, but with that in mind.
Yes, absolutely. I try to keep the farm to table uh, lifestyle. That's really my ultimate goal is going to local farmers and cooking from what they have and just really whole foods nutrition, not loaded in all the junk that they serve us. Even, we have a really popular, healthy alternative place to get food out here. And when I go in, it's loaded with sodium. And it's like, no, that's not what we want to do. We want to, cut that sodium out because it's not good for us. So just
So
really trying
paying
to,
attention to the quality, the farm to table, the
yes,
uh, the authenticity of the food. It hasn't
yes,
been messed with.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
How amazing. Yeah, how wonderful. So, I mean, people can reach you through this, through contacting me. If they want to reach you, they can get hold of me and I can point them to you. Because it
Absolutely.
sounds to me like, especially out in the US, where food and nutrition can be an issue.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure you're going to be in huge demand.
Yeah, I hope so. It's been a slow and steady, but whoever's had it, they enjoy it, and so that's all I'm grateful for.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It really has been a lovely, a lovely, gentle conversation through the learnings of, what can go wrong in community and so often does.
Yes, yes, yes. It's it's sad. It's very sad, but hopefully there's a community out there that we could all learn from.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate it. It's been a nice time chatting with you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.